court today. You know, Texas is the other big one we've been looking at, that immigration law known as SB 4. You know, if you look at your clock now, less than, I guess, 2 hours from now, that would, the way I understand it, would go into effect unless the court steps in. You know, it's been paused. The deadline, they said, was going to be 5 p.m. Eastern, which, of course, 4 Central, so that would be coming up on it. And Kate Lincoln Goldfinch joins us now. Kate's an immigration attorney in the state of Texas. Welcome back. Is that how, that's what happens, right? I mean, this if we don't hear anything, then the law, which would allow the local authorities to make these immigration arrests at 5 p.m. Eastern tonight, right, goes in effect?
Yes, that's right. There's been federal litigation where initially the federal judge enjoined or blocked the law. Then very quickly, the Fifth Circuit picked it up and reversed the injunction, meaning the law could go into effect. And that same day, the Supreme Court picked up the case. This was a week ago Monday, and extended the injunction, but only until this afternoon. So we're all waiting to hear what the Supreme Court is going to do. No one really has a guess right now. And so SB 4 could go into effect in the next few hours.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking all day. I said, well, what are they going to say? Are they going to say anything? And here we are past 3 p.m. and we haven't heard anything. So let's put up what this law does, SB 4. First of all, I explained it briefly, but we could put up on the screen about allowing these police officers to arrest people on probable cause. Would be a Class B misdemeanor, punishable, as you see at the top of the screen, up to 6 months in jail. And you can read through some of the other bullets there as I asked Kate about it, because you're against it, right? So that's the point of view you bring to this. Tell us why.
Sure. So SB 4, I don't think is constitutional. It encourages police officers to engage in racial profiling and to arrest, charge, detain people for entering the country illegally. And then it goes even further to ask state court criminal judges to order deportations. And this could apply to people who actually already have legal status in the United States or who are in immigration court proceedings under the jurisdiction of an immigration judge. So logistically, the law doesn't make a lot of sense, and the way that it will play out is very concerning from a humanitarian perspective, but also from an economic perspective. Right. I think, you know, as an immigration lawyer, I have a lot of clients who are thinking about leaving the state once this law goes into effect.
Well, that would be, that one we could talk about both of those. That last part I would push back on a little bit, because my assumption would be that even if it were ruled to be unconstitutional, that people would look at it and say net, it would probably make the state safer. In other words, would cut down on crime. I'm sure that's what proponents of the bill would say. But the other thing that popped into my mind about Texas, you talk about the economy there. I mean, it would take a lot for Texas to start losing people. They've been pretty good economy in terms of people wanting to move there for other reasons, lower taxes and the like.
Sure, and a lot of immigrants in Texas do a lot of really important jobs in the field of construction, et cetera. And remember, this is a law that impacts not just undocumented people, but people who also have legal status. Right. So people who are part of the immigrant community, who feel the anti-immigrant sentiment in the state of Texas, are finally getting to the point where they're thinking, you know what, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I in this state anymore? And these are very hardworking, impressive people that the state doesn't want to lose. And, you know, you add to that, people in protest are going to stop visiting the state of Texas. We'll see conferences getting canceled. I mean, we've seen impacts like this in other states. And so I bring up the economic impacts just to say that I know that there are lots of people who are not motivated or moved by, you know, the plight of immigrants or the humanitarian perspective.
No, I understand.
Remind people that this is something that impacts all Texans, not just.
Right, but I'm just saying that the proponents of the law would probably say the economic impact would be beneficial because it would make the state safer, right? It would, you know, it would cut down on crime and the like, and you know, that would make a safer state and is a more economic prosperous state. I'm sure that's their argument.
Sure, and that's not actually based in data. You know, all of the studies have shown that immigrants commit crimes at a much lower rate than
right.
Do. So it's not actually the reality of the situation. This is not
any hunch on what's going to happen here or why we haven't heard? So it looks like the bet would be now it goes into effect, 5 p.m. Eastern?
If we don't hear anything, the law does take effect, and potentially that is what the Supreme Court does, and then we'll all be, you know, bracing for change here in Texas starting, you know, tonight and tomorrow.
All right, Kate, we'll check back. We'll see maybe before the show ends we'll get something on this, but we appreciate you joining us once again. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.